Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about Hurricane Lee. So this thing is, I think, the 39th Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean within the last 100 years. It is already a storm that has broken almost several records. It intensified at incredible speeds from a Category 1 to a Category 5, I think within less than 18 hours, something that is very, very unusual, and I think only 3 other hurricanes have done in the last 100 years. So this thing's already very, very unusual. And the thing is, for now, yeah, it's well offshore. It's not really affecting Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, any of the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, and it most likely won't, which is kind of a miracle, to be honest. Especially since, it's going to take a turn right north of them, so it's going to avoid it impacting them. However, there is still a very noticeable, kind of ongoing concern that the northeastern United States may get hit by by this thing. So obviously, there's been a lot of videos I've seen online that's like a massive storm is coming for the Northeast. You gotta prepare. Obviously, it's definitely a threat, but I kind of want to go deep into this video and show you what the realistic chances of this are. Obviously, we're still far away. You get to see this thing slow moving. By 8 a.m. Thursday of this upcoming week, it's only right here. So even if it were to make its way all the way towards the northeast, which again is just a chance at this point, it would still be probably another 200-ish hours from now, which is almost over 10 days. So there's still quite a bit of time, and again, it's very uncertain. You can see how fat this cone is. That's not the cone of impacts. It's not like if this thing will grow in size. It's where the center of this storm can be. You can see it does not show the size of the storm. It's where the center can be. So if the center is over here by 8 a.m. Thursday, way over here on the western flank of this cone, then yeah, the northeast, east coast has a pretty good chance of being slammed unless this thing takes a massive turn. If it's over here, even east of Bermuda, well, they're pretty much safe. Obviously, not 100%, but you get the point. Realistically, it'll be probably somewhere in between this cone, so we'll have to wait and see. But you can see the M marking. It's going to be a major hurricane throughout its whole lifespan, so at least then on Thursday. So first of all, let me show you the GFS and how this model handles this storm. So let's start at hour 54. This is where Lee is. You can see it's 9:53. So maybe Category 3, 4, probably Category 3 at this point. As it's starting to turn towards the north, you can see this is now late Tuesday into early Wednesday of this week. Another thing that is noticeable, the Northeast will be having a lot of rain prior to this event. It will be experiencing thunderstorms. Actually, right now, I believe Boston's just east of Boston. Just south and east, there's a severe thunderstorm watch or warning, a special weather statement. They've seen quite a bit of rain in the past few days, and they will probably continue to do so as more and more kind of storm systems coming through. So if this thing were to hit the Northeast, there would be already quite a bit of area saturated with water. Notice what the GFS does, though. We have this high pressure, this trough in a jet stream, right? And a jet stream winds always spin like this in the northern hemisphere. It's not the other way around. And depending on how strong this thing is, its cold front, its tail, could kind of sweep this thing off the shore. Whether or not that will happen remains to be certain, and that's where the models disagree the most. You can see the GFS shows this thing developing, right? You can see the clear motion. It's moving out towards the east. We have this behemoth moving in towards the northwest. So at this point, it would be perfectly on track to hit the U.S. However, what the GFS does, you can see it catches it onto this cold front, and it sweeps it off. You can see once it's caught up in that cold front wind, it changes its direction completely, and it really steers quite clearly from the United States. There would be probably a lot of rip currents, a lot of swells, maybe some coastal flooding right from just the winds and the waves, but no direct landfall, and this thing would hit Canada as probably a weak Category 1, with some heavy rain. Obviously a concern, but nothing really that would be, excessive, to be honest with you, right there. So there's probably still people that would make a massive story out of this, but at that point, that's maybe like a moderate strength nor'easter, all right? However, that's not the only scenario. The GFS actually, funny enough, a few days ago, I don't exactly remember when, but it was the model that was showing this thing hitting the northeast coast, while the European model was avoiding it, right? You can see there, it was a lot closer in the days past, so now it's kind of shifted away from that. However, the European was the one several days ago that was like, no, I don't think it will hit the northeast coast. But in fact, that's exactly what now it's showing. So it's kind of the GFS and European kind of split their kind of opinions on this. So notice this was the European a few days ago, track towards the north, and it would, it didn't really go out far enough, but it stayed pretty far off the northeast coast. And if you look at the most recent model run, it's kind of concerning. So notice that the European is obviously very well regarded. It's usually one that I think it was the first model, or one of the, I think actually one of the first models to pick up on Hurricane Sandy when it took that left hook into the northeastern United States. But I do believe actually that was the NAM, which was like a massive win for the NAM, and it was considered to be a very bad model. And after that event, funny enough, it became a lot more reputable. So I remember reading a story about that and how the NAM it was like its victory day with that one. But let's take a look at this. So notice that the European model shows this thing obviously very strong, concerningly staying towards the north. And what the European model does completely differently is that this cold front, this system, this trough that both the models show, so at least there's agreement on that, drops a lot of rain across the northeast, right? But once it leaves and moves out, the cold front that it remains behind it is not only weak, but it's already moving out way past this storm, while this thing is taking longer according to the European. And if this occurs, you can see that there is still somewhat of this pull towards the north and east by this cold front, but I mean the power of this beast overwhelms it, and you can see this thing just meander straight into the northeast as a 962. I mean, I don't know what that is, probably based off the millibars, the low pressure 962, that's probably a category 2, maybe. Yeah, probably a category 2 hurricane. I don't want to say category 3, but it would be a strong storm, obviously a warrant of concern. Now, obviously, thankfully, the European model hasn't been consistent with this. Just 12 hours ago, this is what it showed. This thing beelining it way out into the ocean, missing it by a few hundred miles. So even if we do get to a point in time where the GFS and European are both showing this thing moving out into the coast, right, say like tomorrow they show that, which I wouldn't be shocked, it still needs to be something that's watched because, well, it could flip right back into both models showing it landfalling within, a few hours. And even if they do show it for a few days, it could get to that point where it's 84 hours out, then we start seeing some of these high-res models pick up some sort of a left hook. Hopefully that doesn't happen because that would be a nightmare. That would leave only 80-ish hours, so maybe 2 to 3 days for folks to prepare. And obviously if the long-range models didn't show a landfall, there wouldn't be as much warnings, which would result in chaos and whatnot. But again, right now, obviously, only we have the global models because it's still relatively far out. I could show you the past few models of the European. You can see it was pretty consistent with taking this thing offshore. Now, it wasn't completely offshore with all its runs. You can see here it hit Canada, also with the U.S. with some rain, but that is still not a terrific, horrendous landfall. And it kind of managed to go further up north, which managed it to get weaker, or it kind of allowed it to get weaker. This is, again, and yet another model run from even further back. Let's go to Thursday. This is what it showed. You can see this one was a lot closer, still though offshore. So it is a little concerning that all of a sudden now the European model is like, well, let's just take this thing onto land, because that's what the latest data shows. So that's not good. And also what I have noticed the last few days is that this little trough that everyone's talking about potentially saving the United States from this thing is kind of speeding up. It's quickening. And if that is the case, and this thing slows down, then it won't really have an impact on this storm, and it will allow this little guy to bury into the United States potentially. So that is definitely a concern. Notice I have this pulled up because I did want to show you that there's already a lot of flash flood watches and warnings for the Northeast here. There's a lot of storms going on here, and yeah, this could definitely be a concern as it's already pretty wet here. And if that storm does end up landfalling here, that could obviously lead to some more increased danger. So right now, this is what Hurricane Lee looks like in terms of its projected path from the National Hurricane Center. You can still see it's pretty far out. I wanted to show you this. This is kind of the GEFS precipitation forecast. So based off this, we could tell what the ensemble thinks where this will track because, well, right there, pretty clear where that guy is right there from that precipitation footprint is leaving behind. And notice, again, it's pretty far out, but the GEFS does show as an ensemble some impact of rain onto Nantucket, not necessarily the Northeast, but it's definitely uncomfortably close. Now you may be wondering what has the trend been, because your trend is your friend. Usually a trend is something you could hack onto, and if it's been trending away or towards, and that's that's a pretty solid indicator of what might be to come. So this is from yesterday, or at midnight, and you can see that it was a larger precipitation footprint, meaning there's probably less agreement within the model, so there is probably a bit more right now. And you can see that they kept it also really close, but a little bit further offshore. So if anything, in the last 12 hours, it's gotten further onshore. How about let's see the last 24 hours, right? You can see it's, again, pretty close. And you can see definitely some of those blues and oranges getting in there. So overall, still a lot of disagreement. But if anything, that epicenter with that heaviest rain, I would say has shifted a little bit towards the east, or sorry, towards the west. On the other hand, the European model and its ensembles are, as you can see, taking the storm through the northeast, or sorry, through the southern Atlantic here. Obviously, taking that curve just like every other model, but they do show this storm pretty uncomfortably close to the northeast. And in fact, what's even more worrying, that compared to just 24 hours ago, it's a lot more further onshore than it is now. Obviously, it's still offshore, but you could see that this because this is an ensemble of 50 models, so this is kind of like the average look, right? So the range is still pretty big, but the blue colors with that heavier rain obviously indicating closer to the center of the storm are further away, not even hitting really Nantucket or any of that kind, really far out moved peninsulas and islands. While with the most recent one, yeah, you can see those blue colors easily get on in there, indicating a much more of a closer hit. So we'll have to see whether or not this trend is something, the start of something new. That would be obviously very concerning, but it's definitely a possibility, especially since this thing is still so far out. You can see that we are, showing this making landfall potentially. This would be next week Sunday, so more than a week from today. So that is very, very far out. Now, looking at the actual storm itself on Tropical Tidbits, here are kind of a few things about it. Notice its maximum winds right now are 100 knots. Gusts unknown. That is very strong. That's not 100 miles per hour. That is much more. That is probably something closer to 120, 130. Notice that the radius of maximum winds is 10 nautical miles, so that's also, that's actually pretty small. This storm is a relatively small storm for now. And you can see that's the location, the exact quadrants. Here's that millibar pressure. So it has weakened from a Category 5. It's a Category 3 right now. And you can see that it's a general expectation for this thing to intensify before then weakening. Now, this doesn't show where this thing will track, or its track. It just shows us the intensity. So we'll have to wait and see. But again, there is a general concurrence that this thing will be weakening. And that, if you put 2 and 2 together, that could make sense that this thing is generally going to be lifting towards the north, as if it was going to go through Florida. It would probably, remain rather intense and not weaken. And yeah, at that point, I would say that possibility is very, very low for that to occur. You can see that the spaghetti model showing this thing, the Jeep EPS, really showed this average look pretty far off the coast, and I don't know if that's actually going to happen. Hopefully, but it seems increasingly unlikely. Obviously, there's a few outliers that show it hitting. I think, that will be quite a bit of them in the future, as this thing is obviously, well, you saw the trend is more into line with this thing hitting the northeast, so we'll have to wait and see. But again, you can see some individual models taking this closer, but none showing it into Florida or not. So I really don't expect that. I mean, it's still a possibility, right? Because between here and there, there's like 5 days. But again, I really don't think this thing will be hitting the Florida or the Caribbean. The threat for that is very low. But you can see that cone of the center is definitely pretty large once it turns up toward the north. Alright, that's basically it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.